Hey, what's up, guys? Jag from Jag Sports, and we're going to talk a little bit about Ja Morant. Now, before we do that, hit subscribe, like, and notification, and you are gonna see what I'm spitting. Not literally, I wouldn't do that to you guys. So, here's the deal: is Ja Morant a superstar? Yeah, he is, 100%. But are the Memphis Grizzlies that damn good to go to the finals? I'll leave the ball in your court. He's 100% a superstar, but is the Memphis Grizzlies going to the finals? Are the Memphis Grizzlies going to the finals? Watch this clip.
Gamer Allen Iverson took to Twitter following Ja's 52-point performance, sharing this photo of his 2001 MVP trophy, tagging Morant while saying sooner or later. Stephen A.
Yeah.
I know Joel Embiid is that dude, but Ja is making a strong case right now.
Yeah.
At this moment, is he the MVP?
No. I still think that when you consider what DeMar DeRozan is doing in the Eastern Conference and at the top seed in the Eastern Conference, they were winning games even when Zach LaVine is going down and he was putting up 35-plus a night. You've got to take that in consideration. I think the adversity that Joel Embiid had to go through in Philadelphia because of the drama and the soap opera that involved Ben Simmons, you've got to take him into consideration. There is no definitive MVP right now. As far as I said it weeks ago, it's fluid. It's fluid. It's Embiid one week. It's DeMar DeRozan the next. It's Jokic the next. You can't ignore what he's been doing in Denver because he hasn't had Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. And so when we consider the level of stress and drama that Joel Embiid has had to go through, when we consider the kind of arduous circumstances Jokic had to go through, when we consider what obviously you look at Joel Embiid again and DeMar DeRozan and then Jokic and what he's had to go through, you take into account Ja Morant. Now, he hasn't had Dillon, and we get all of that, but Bane and Jaren Jackson and those boys can ball. They're exceptionally well coached. We got to give credit where credit is due is that. They got some young athletic lions on their squad to go with Ja Morant. Ja Morant is definitely in the discussion. He's right there. It's a race to the finish line. These last few weeks are going to tell it to us. But here's what I will say about Ja Morant, outside of the spectacular and all of that stuff, like the great Greg Popovich pointed out, the brother knows how to play basketball, and we get all of that. You know who you can call Ja Morant right now, ladies and gentlemen? You can call him Kevin Durant. Why would I bring up Kevin Durant?
Yeah, how so?
Like Kevin Durant, Ja Morant was the number 2 overall pick. Like Kevin Durant, he's going to be the guy we're talking about. Greg Oden went down, obviously perpetual knee injuries, not just negated his career. And we understand that he was the number 1 overall pick. Kevin Durant was number 2. Well, Zion Williamson, number 1 overall pick. Who's number 2? Ja Morant. What's Zion Williams doing? I mean, we don't know what the hell he's doing. We sincerely hope he ain't eating Twinkies. We hope that he's on that treadmill and those Peloton bikes and keeping his weight down, because that's a big brother right there. And we know how great Zion Williamson is when he's on the court. He's something to behold, but he hasn't been on the court. Ja Morant has. And as the number 2 overall pick, who had a number 1 overall pick that was perpetually injured, okay, Ja Morant and Kevin Durant's careers are actually mirroring one another to this point in Ja Morant's career because of where they were drafted, who was drafted before them, in terms of their perpetual injuries and what they are doing on the basketball court. And that's why I said when I think about Ja Morant, I also think about Kevin Durant.
All right, Stephen A. I know you're out in L.A. and you got to play this role and you're prepared to do all the things that you do so greatly. But there's something you said in that argument that I'm going to go ahead and lean in on and take to the next step. You said that MVP is fluid. I agree with you 100%. Fluid. It is moving. However, on this glorious Tuesday, March 1st, at, what time is it? 10:07. The MVP in the league for me right now, at this moment, in this fluid conversation, would be one Ja Morant. And I think all of the names that you rattled off are incredible, and it is absolutely going to be a race to the finish. Photo finish, who can lean their head forward and their nose touch that ribbon first. But right now, I really think you have to give it to Ja Morant because last night I was looking forward to the Bulls versus the Miami Heat. And I was disappointed because the Chicago Bulls that was sitting atop the standings did not necessarily show up. Credit the Miami Heat. And so as I'm watching those two guys, right now, the nod goes to Ja Morant. And then you talk about Joel Embiid, who has been tremendous. But honestly, Stephen A., I think that there is credence for the idea that James Harden's addition to the Philadelphia 76ers will weaken the argument that Joel Embiid has for MVP. And so to me, right now in this fluid conversation, you have to give the nod to Ja. I agree with you about those young Lions and that squad. That front office has done a tremendous job. They have been coached very well. But when I look at that roster, outside of Steven Adams, there's not a ton of experience, which to me only adds to Ja's case as a leader and an MVP candidate. Right now at this moment.
But that's a decent argument, Monica. I'm not going to ignore and throw shade on your argument entirely. What I would remind you of, I mean, you have been on the show numerous times, okay? Numerous times. Doing the great job that you've been doing. I haven't heard you talk about Ja Morant. I didn't see you bring him up. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to hold that against you, though.
Because you was out.
I didn't hear you bring him up. I didn't hear you bring him up. I know I brought him up, but here's the deal. He's got 46. He's got 52, okay? When we're seeing about, don't get me wrong, he sprinkled in a few 30-point games here and there, okay? He had 23, 26, had 44-point game, then had a 20-point game, whatever. When we talked about Joel Embiid and what he was bringing to the table, those were monster numbers that he was bringing. When we talked about DeMar DeRozan and what he did over a 9-game stretch, and with Chicago being in the lead, and with the Eastern Conference being more significant than they've been in recent memory, we can't ignore that either, particularly with Zach LaVine going down. So I'm not taking anything away from Ja Morant. He might end up winning this. Certainly from a box office attraction, you can put him up there as number one, even ahead of Embiid, Jokic, and DeMar DeRozan. Ja Morant is box office. That is something that we got to pay attention to because as a voter, that does play a role. When you putting up similar numbers, when you show up in crunch time, when you're winning basketball games, and all of these different things, all of those things are worthy of being pointed to. We can't negate them. But in the end, when we're talking about Memphis, we talk about them being the number 4 or obviously a number 3 seed in the Western Conference. Could they get to number 2? We know they can, particularly with the Warriors struggling with their injuries. We've seen Phoenix, but CP3 goes down. They're clearly the number 1 seed, and CP3 was in the conversation. But in Chicago, they're the number 1 seed. In Chicago, they were winning basketball games, and they were ahead of everybody else. And DeMar DeRozan, without question, was leading the way in the house that MJ built with a statue of MJ outside. We can't ignore that. Well, obviously, a number 3 seed in the Western Conference. Could they get to number 2? We know they can, particularly with the Warriors struggling with their injuries. We've seen Phoenix, but CP3 goes down. They're clearly the number 1 seed, and CP3 was in the conversation. But in Chicago, they're the number 1 seed. In Chicago, they were winning basketball games, and they were ahead of everybody else. And DeMar DeRozan, without question, was leading the way in the house that MJ built with a statue of MJ outside. We can't ignore that.
You are absolutely right, Stephen A. And this is why, again, everybody might go crazy that I said it, but that was at 10:07. The time has changed. 10:10, he's still my MVP. However, in the case of Chicago, I am very, very curious to see how things unfold because when I checked that All-Star break, they had to go on the road, I believe, for 12 out of the 17 games to the end of March. And exactly. And so their schedule is about to be a gauntlet. Through most of the regular season outside of last night where the Bulls slipped up, or I shouldn't even say slipped up because the loss isn't necessarily a slip up. It's how they lost to the Miami Heat. Through most of the season, I think that DeMar DeRozan has probably been the leader in the clubhouse for MVP. But at this moment on this show, on this day, this answer is subject to change. I'm going with Ja.
All right, let's stay with Ja here. And let me ask you this, Stephen A. So now Memphis, you've talked about how Countdown's going out to Memphis. We know this is a big deal. He's big time. They've won 9.
They're big time.
Yeah. They've won 9 of their last 10. When we talk about the Warriors, they've lost 5 of their last 7. I realize they've got some bodies down that will be returning. But do you believe right now in the standings, they're 3rd in the West, can Ja lead the Grizz to a title?
He can, but he won't. And I love Ja Morant. It was great seeing him at All-Star Weekend. I'm a fan. And I think the Memphis Grizzlies fans should deeply appreciate the brother that they got there. doing his thing, and the team they have there doing their thing. Make no mistake about it. And I know that they've beaten the Warriors a couple of times. They faced them this season. I know all of that. But I'm not concerned. The Warriors ain't losing to the Memphis Grizzlies, a healthy Warrior squad. Injured, that's different. A healthy Warrior squad ain't losing to the Memphis Grizzlies. I don't think a healthy Phoenix Suns squad is losing to the Memphis Grizzlies. I think the Memphis Grizzlies are coming. I think with Ja Morant, there's a title in their future. I think the Memphis Grizzlies can make some noise this year and knock off one, not both, but knock off somebody big. I get all of that. But I believe that when the finals comes around,
Yeah.
I unfortunately, because I am no fan of San Francisco, I unfortunately will be in San Francisco. I am a fan. I am a fan of that arena.
There's
but I'm not
great
a fan.
restaurants in San Francisco, by the way, and great shopping.
There's great.
Carry on.
There's great
It's
a
the
lot
weather.
of things in San Francisco, and there's some things that's not so great. But I ain't getting into that. Okay. The bottom line is that San Francisco does not turn me on. All right. But I'm gonna be there because I believe that the Golden State Warriors are going to the finals. And I think all of this is mere bag of shells. I think all of this is mere bag of shells. When the playoffs come, you got to deal with Clay. You got to deal with Steph. You got to deal with Dre setting them up. You got to deal with some of the young bodies, fresh legs, and a stout defensive team when they really amp it up that you got to contend with Wiseman coming back. I'm not sleeping on that. That is what I believe. Memphis Grizzlies will be on that. They're going to make it to the conference semifinals, all right?
Okay.
But one of them brothers go knock Memphis off.
So you guys tell me, are the Memphis Grizzlies going to the finals? At the end of the day, it's kind of like they're really good. They're really, really good. But going to the finals, I don't know. That's kind of pushing it because you have an injured Phoenix Suns, as in CP3, injured Golden State Warriors. Klay Thompson is not back to his 100% self. And Draymond Green is injured. James Wiseman is still out. So, not a fully healthy team whatsoever. Memphis is fully healthy, but you also have to take into consideration Denver Nuggets. They've been 10-0 ever since they signed Boogie Cousins. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like you don't even have Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr. yet. And they're rumored to come back. So the second they come back, it's kind of like, okay, well, it's game on. But another team to actually watch out for is the Los Angeles Clippers. And I'm not saying Lakers, I'm saying Clippers, because Clippers are without their two juggernauts and, they're getting it done. And just imagine if those two juggernauts came back right before the playoffs. That would be insane. Like, you know what I mean? You got like a month and a half left before playoffs. And if those two guys come back before the playoffs, it could be lights out. But going back, getting back to this original question, are the Memphis Grizzlies good enough to make the finals? You tell me. I want to hear from your opinion. I want to hear your comments. This is Jag from Jaggy Sports. Like, notification, and subscribe. Jag from Jaggy Sports.